Fascinating Fossils, the Sigillaria tree by Dennis M. Morrison. As you can probably tell if you've looked at very many of my videos, I love fossils. And I recently did a video on a very fine fossil specimen that I found, a specimen of a lepidodendron bark. Well, the lepidodendron has a close cousin growing at the same time, and that is the Sigillaria tree, and it grew in the Carboniferous forests of the Pennsylvanian era. The Sigillaria is an extinct, spore-bearing, arborescent tree-like plant that flourished, as I already said, in the late Carboniferous period, and by the early Permian period it was extinct. But it is another amazing creation of the greatest scientific mind ever, and that is the God of the Holy Bible. The Sigillaria is related to the lycopsids or club mosses, but even more closely related to the quillwort. This was a tall tree-like plant with an occasionally forked trunk that lacked wood. Support came from a layer of closely packed leaf bases just below the surface of the trunk, while its center was filled with pith. The old leaf bases expanded as the trunk grew in width and left a diamond-shaped pattern, which is evident in the fossils and which is similar to the pattern left on the lepidodendron tree bark fossils. The trunk had photosynthetic tissue on the surface, meaning it was probably green. Some of the bark fossil displays a surface with vertical striations, such as the awesome large specimen which I found, which there's a picture towards the end of this video. It's very difficult to photograph it. It's under glass and it's very, very black. But anyways, the trunk of the tree was topped with a plume of long grass-like leaves, so that the plant looks somewhat like a tall forked bottle brush. The plant bore its spores in cone-like structures attached to the stem. The Sigillaria, like many ancient lycopods, had a relatively short life cycle, growing rapidly and reaching maturity in but a few years. It is believed that the Sigillaria died after reproduction. However, this has not been proven. It grew in the Carboniferous forest, as I said, of the late Pennsylvanian era, along with the lepidodendron, or the scale tree, and other plants such as the calamite. Now, as you can see in my photos, the Sigillaria bark exhibits straight, fluted furrows along the trunk midsection. Occasionally, the trunks were completely smooth. A difference between this and the close cousin, the lepidodendron, can be found in its reproductive cones. The lepidodendron cones were attached singularly near the tip of its branches. However, the Sigillaria cones occurred in clusters attached in certain places along the upper stem. This tree-like plant attained heights of as much as 130 feet tall. When this plant, represented by my fossil specimen, was alive in what would one day be Saginaw, Michigan, Saginaw would have been close to the equator. During the Carboniferous period, a large portion of Europe and North America was on the equator. The warm and consistently humid climate was ideal for the growth of extensive swampy forests where this type of plant thrived. The Pacific Basin was the largest Carboniferous basin, which comprised regions of what are now Ireland, England, North France, Belgium, the Netherlands, Germany, and Poland. What I'm going to say next is scientific theory, and I disagree with most of it, as I support 100% the flood of Noah's day. The flood is fact, and it's borne out in the fossil record throughout the world. Whether you accept the flood fact for the deposit of sediments or science's claims, we know these fossils were formed by being buried in heavy layers of sediment. Now, the scientific theory has it that periodic changes in the sea levels caused the rivers that traversed the forest to flood, depositing massive amounts of sand and mud, thereby burying the forests that were along the banks. In a period of 1 million years, several thousand meters of sediment would be deposited densely, packing and pressing the abundant vegetation into flattened rock fossil impressions. Abundant vegetation in these forests included the Sigillaria, lepidodendron, and calamites. Science always uses millions of years as a magic formula to make changes happen, and this is wrong. It's never been proven to be right. The flood happened quite rapidly and had the same effect in short time as the so-called and alleged millions of years of flooding rivers allegedly had. Let's look for a moment at the earth before the flood, and this is going in a direction that I hadn't intended to, but much has changed and is clearly in contrast to what evolutionists teach in order to discredit God and rob him of the glory due him. You see, in Genesis 2:6, the Bible states emphatically that in the days of Eden and shortly thereafter, that the world was watered by a mist that came up out of the ground. It wasn't watered by rain. Rain had never fallen on planet Earth up until the flood. Okay, so that's why it was so impressive when the flood was over and the rainbow appeared in the sky, that this was a promise made of God, and people were held in awe by it because they'd never seen a rainbow before. It had never rained, so there was never a rainbow. The fact is that before the flood of Noah, when the floodgates of the heavens were open and the depths were let loose, that the earth was completely enclosed in a canopy of vapor, which caused a greenhouse type effect on the planet, which meant that that plants grew luxuriously and abundantly and large. And there was a wide variety that could not exist after the flood of Noah's time because of the change in the environment, and which is why you see so many extinct species in the fossil record. The Bible is always borne out as truth, and science, when it goes against the Bible, can always be borne out as false. Thanks for taking a listen, and I'll be back with another fossil specimen soon.